Shakyamuni Svo Sashipuki Choshiameto Tramare Rabalingashi Nidegem Padi Shintu Mite Ulowarki Drokunonam Dashingla Chö Shoyidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dage Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dage Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo Haike da luda ne jinge rubunda da mi genam da ruwa gunge dranam che zamba tamche ketu dagi cheten to tamche ketu dagi cheten to. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Come abbiamo detto,
As we said in the previous days,
il percorso del Dharma,
the path of Dharma, our path of, let's call it, spiritual growth, also understood as development as people, as a people. It's a gradual process, and it can come exclusively through a process of familiarization. I know that many of us expect some kind of miracle where we take something, I put something on your head and something magical happens from one day to the next, and then everything's fine. But as Lama Ganchen Rinpoche said, the true miracle is the hard work miracle. Obviously, there are blessings, there are different conditions that can help us to a certain point to move something inside that we didn't expect, and that helps. But this comes mostly from a daily process. When this process is present, then there can be different ways to support this. Pilgrimages, empowerments, different forms of blessings that help and it then work very well. What doesn't work is this idea that I don't need to do anything and then someone else will do on my behalf. So I entrust myself to you and you do for me. I know very often it's something that we look for, someone to save us. But it's a little bit like, as I've said, I'm the time I was in, I've told this story before, the time I was in Chatren in Tibet with Lama Michel Rinpoche in the car, and there was also the abbot of the monastery of Chatren in the car with us. He was quite elderly, and he has since left his body. So we were in the car, and it was maybe a trip of a half an hour, but it took 3 or 4 hours because along the way, all the people would come out onto the road to ask for blessings. So the car would drive like 2 kilometers an hour, and Rinpoche would put his hand outside and bless everyone's head, and this habit of this place, the people would ask in dialect. They would ask, "Oh, I take refuge in you. Make so that I don't go to hell." And the abbot, in dialect, answered, "If you are not going there, I'm not going to send you there." And maybe they didn't even understand what he meant. I mean, it was just a habit of that's the way they ask for blessings. And it's a little bit like this. When we entrust ourselves into someone, no one has this ability to take away our suffering or to give us peace and happiness. Buddha himself said, I cannot take away your suffering the way we sweep away dirt. I can't eliminate your mental defilements the way we can rinse a spot on cloth. I can show you, though, I could show you what you need to cultivate and what you need to abandon so you can cultivate your path. And then there are also blessings and things that help. But it's very important to start from this principle that it's something up to us that we need to do. And what does that mean? What is it that we need to do? Mostly, it means we need to change our unhealthy habits. We have habits that we've created. We have habits that we've taken from life to life. We have habits that we have inherited culturally. So we have many habits. And there's a gradual job at hand, little by little, to create healthy habits and abandon those unhealthy ones. And to do this path is divided into 2 moments. When we focus our attention fully on this so-called meditative samadhi, where one meditates on what one wants to become. And then there's the rest of the time when you're eating, when you're getting dressed, when you're talking, when you're walking, when you're working, everyday life. Practicing Dharma is a full-time job. It's not something that one does when they go to the temple or during the morning meditation. It's something that's present 24/7 to do it correctly. As we've said many times, the path, the closest path, the quickest path, starts always where you are. So it's useless to want to be something that you are not yet. Useless to say, oh no, I should meditate 4 hours a day. No, let's start where we are. The closest path starts where we are, and the fastest one is the one we're able to do. It's useless to say, oh, it would be faster if I could meditate 18 hours a day. Let's start with 15 minutes, what I'm able to do. And there's a discrepancy between what we understand conceptually and what our inner reality. And we need to have the patience and to respect also our limits, our time. So one thing is understanding that it's not good for us to get angry. Another thing is not getting angry. So from the moment, when once maybe years go by, or I'm not just waiting, no, years of hard work between understanding that getting angry is bad for me and being able to not get angry. Sometimes I've heard people say, oh, Buddhism doesn't work. I've been following Buddhism for 30 years. Everything's the same. And here you have two different cases, and I've seen them both. Sometimes it's true that person's understood very little in 30 years. But the point is, I mean, it's not about being Buddhist and getting like a membership card and you label yourself Buddhist. It doesn't mean that is going to better you somehow. Being a Buddhist or getting close to a great master has benefits, yes, but the real benefit comes by putting into practice. So if you, in these years, you've based yourself on this mere identity of being Buddhist, but you haven't put the effort into facing your shadows and putting effort into opposing those negative habits, you've just been continuing with your negative habits, the ones that were already present. And then maybe another case is when people say it's 30 years and nothing's changed. But then I ask, well, do you still get angry the way you used to? No. Do you have more concentration compared to at the very beginning? Do you react? Do you react to the various situations in the same way? No. I suffer a lot less. So the conclusion is it works. If you were expecting something magical, or you start seeing Buddhas everywhere and you start flying and this kind of thing, I mean, that's not our objective. If someone wants to see all the Buddhas and all of this, there are faster methods. There's certain mushrooms, for example, that could help you very quickly. I have a disciple, when she began the Dharma, or when he started the Dharma, he was using substances, let's say, and he tried to mix the two things. And so he was using something actually quite strong, and then he would start meditating, and he would have incredible visualizations, but with all the negative side effects too. And then one day, I mean, he had prepared this substance, and he was about to take it, and then he saw in front of him the Dharma protector, Dorje Shuten, who said to him, "This is ruining your life." And at that point, and he said, "Okay, did I already take it? No, I haven't taken it yet." And at that point, he felt a little scared, and then he threw it all away, and he never touched it again. And I'm totally against the use of mind-altering substances, even if it can bring to a positive experience. It's an experience that's not sustainable. But whatever it is, the practice of the Dharma has mostly to do with the change of our conduct, physical, verbal, mental, which means that we invert our unhealthy habits into healthy habits on a physical level, verbal level, and mental level. This is what it's about. And to do this, there are these two moments. The moments where we actively meditate or some kind of spiritual practice to familiarize ourselves with that aspect. And there are moments where we're in everyday life. In our everyday life, as we saw yesterday in the answer to question number 11, there are some important aspects. Let's just go over them a little bit. The first is to maintain this mindful recollection in what we're doing. So to be aware, I'm eating, I'm taking a walk, I'm walking, I'm taking a shower, I'm taking a shower. I feel the water. I feel the water touch my head, my face. This whole process, I mean, feel it in every minimum detail. And when you do that, even the pleasures are more are better. There's an enormous difference between drinking water or doing something you like and living it fully, where you feel every aspect of it, and then when you just take it and drink it and you're already thinking about something else. When I'm with someone, I am with that person. So there's an important job to do, which is to try as much as possible to be present. Be present where we are in what we're doing. And this requires a particular effort. And I say once again that unfortunately there are things that take us away from where we are and what we're doing. Normally, these things are objects or situations or things that we perceive that connect us to something else, take us somewhere else. If, for example, I start telling you a story, where does your mind go? I tell you a story that happened in India. Your mind will go to India in those places. As I said, I've said many times, we're bombarded with information that take us away from the place where we are. News, all social media, we're constantly taken away from this present moment. And not only this, but that allows also for external things to enter into what we're doing. So advice would be, when we're doing something, we're doing that thing. For example, if I'm talking to someone, I'm talking to you. And in that moment, if someone calls me, I'm not going to answer the phone. If someone answers, if she writes to me, I'm not going to answer. There are few exceptions. If Panchen Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen calls me, I excuse myself, and I would answer at the time when Rinpoche was alive. I would answer. I mean, if there's not an emergency, let's say, then I wouldn't. But so often we're just taken away from where we are. We shouldn't allow this. So there's this work, this job to go against something that has become a habit. This habit of not being where we are with the people we are. We have this habit to just go from one thing to the other and be somewhere else. So it's a very hard job at hand, because changing a habit means going outside our comfort zone, and it's always hard. But once we do change, then it's difficult to do the opposite. In this moment, we need to put effort. It's tiresome, but it means really going against our habit and going back to that habit of being where we are and being present. And to do that, we need to cut situations and objects of distraction that take our mind somewhere else. So there's very simple things that we can do. For example, we can take away the cell phone notifications completely. It takes a little bit of courage, but you can do it. Okay, well, what if an email comes? Well, sooner or later you'll read it. If someone calls you, when it's the right time, you'll see it, or they'll call back. So we need to really protect ourselves to bring our mind in the present. Another important aspect is about protecting the three vows. The symbol that represents the teachings of the Dharma is the Dharma wheel that actually looks like a wheel of a ship. It's made of three parts. There's a nucleus, and there are spokes, and then there's the rim. Almost like a carriage wheel. So the nucleus represents the essence, wisdom, a correct view of reality. The spokes represent concentration. We're directing that wisdom. And the rim represents morality, our ability to maintain our commitments, which keeps it all together. It's said that morality is this fertile ground on which the Dharma practice can grow, and without that, nothing can grow. It's even if we put in a lot of seeds and water, but the soil isn't fertile and it won't be able to support that. So, in addition to seeds and water, we need fertile soil. So this morality is this fertile soil on which we can plant concentration and wisdom. When we talk about morality, we're not talking about what you can do, what you can't do. We're talking about our ability to respect our own commitments. And they're of three types. The commitment to abandon what's harmful and to do what is positive, beneficial, and to benefit others. So imagine morality like white lines on the road. It happened to me once. I was driving on a country road with many curves, without these white lines at night in the fog. What happens? I mean, it's really difficult because you don't know where you need to go. And it's happened also to be in similar conditions, but with the white lines on the road. And even on the highway, I remember once we were coming from Bologna to Milan, there was a tremendous amount of fog, but I had the reference of these white lines on the road. You could see where there was a curve coming up. We have days that are full of sun where we don't need these guardrails. They seem useless. We know where we're going, but on foggy days, we need those white lines, those guardrails. They're essential. Otherwise, we'll go off the road, off our path. When there are days of mental clarity, when we have clarity with ourselves and with others, we have inner clarity for ourselves and others. So the vows that we've taken are not that necessary because we automatically follow them. But when there's an inner storm or full of fog, at that point, we need reference points that show us what our references are, where are our guardrails. I shouldn't go past here. I need to stay in this space. We need that. And these are the vows that we take, these commitments that we take. And they're fundamental. So if I take the commitment to not lie on a sunny day, I don't need that vow because it's natural to not lie. But it's important to not lie even when one feels like they want to tell a lie, even when there's a dark day and a stormy, foggy day, and I see that situation and I really want to lie, and I think that lying would be the best solution. At that point, I need that white line on the road or the guardrail, and have that vow, that commitment to not lie helps me stay on the road even on those dark days. And the same for all other things. So something that's very important for our lives. It's very important to take commitments in our lives. There are some commitments that we can call formal, traditional, like no, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't have um, um, don't have a sexual misconduct, and don't take mind-altering substances like alcohol or drug. And there are many other vows. For example, in the mind training, there are 18 pieces of advice. For example, to not criticize others. And then the next one, the next vow, the next commitment is mind your own business, which technically says don't think about the business of others. To me, it's a beautiful vow and super useful. The correct term is don't speak about the lacking qualities of others, which means don't criticize. And then don't think about other people's business. So I don't tell you now to take this vow or not, but I invite you to reflect on this. What are the aspects of your daily lives, starting from the way you eat, the way you speak, the way you interact with the world, that those ways that you do that are harmful? Think about one or two things, not too many things. I say, okay, this I need to avoid. Maybe you're not able to do that always, but maybe start in the morning. Okay, without doing it twice in the afternoon. But I begin creating limits for myself. And what are those things that I know are good for me, but I find difficult? Okay, having more awareness, meditating, being quiet, turning off my phone. There's an infinite number of things. So what are things that are good for me that I need to cultivate? And I take the commitment. You reflect on it, you write it down, and you take that commitment formally for a limited amount of time, for a week, for a day. For today, I won't do this. For today, I will do this. And if it works well, then you can take that commitment again. Up to maximum 1 month. If you keep it well for a long period of time, then you can do 6 months, a year, etc. And then there's also the commitment to benefit others. What are the things that I can do in my life every day to get out of this self-centered, self-cherishing, so that I can benefit others? These are the 3 vows, and it's fundamental. Before we protect the vows, we need to take them. So we need to take commitments with ourselves. Normally, it's done in the presence of our own guru and all the holy beings and sentient beings as witnesses, to abandon what is harmful, to cultivate what's beneficial, and to benefit others. Here, Panchen Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen also talks about protecting the doors to our senses. So be careful. Everything that enters into one of our senses transforms us. It's an enormous illusion to think that I can eat something and that it won't have an effect on my body. It's something, for example, once I read, I don't know, this is a view of a historian who was talking about life 10,000 years ago, when in India and other parts of the world, he was talking about India, this culture that was mostly nomadic, so hunter-gatherer, in passing from hunter-gatherers to agriculture, and there are many things that happened along this process, and one aspect is that at a certain point they started not only to cultivate the land but to also to raise animals, and they started to eat much more meat compared to before. And there's a correlation between the increase of red meat and the increase of population, because the increase of eating red meat increased sexual energy. It just really changed, changed, also increased their aggressiveness. Just to say, I mean, there are many other things in this research, this study, but the point is that what we eat has effect on us. What we touch, what we see, what we hear, and what we think. So protect your door, your sense doors, and make a distinction between what is good for me and what I like. And the priority should be given to what is good for me. And wonderful if you can find what you like and is also good for you. Be careful how we eat, and be careful how we also sleep. Give value to quality sleep. Don't go to sleep exhausted. Try to go to sleep without strong stimuli, so that you just end up passing out in front of the TV. If you need to, you can read a book. Do something that little by little can calm you down and bring and calm you down. So we need to change our lifestyle and not just take sleeping pills. It's fundamental to sleep well, wake up well, and to do that, we really need to diminish the stimuli. Now we get to question number 12 that has to do with the other side. So we saw a little bit what we should do in our everyday life. But ideally, it's important also to sit down and meditate, have a moment of formal meditation. So the question here is, let me take the Tibetan. Also, in regard to the actual session, how many sessions should one do in a day? And how should one approximate the duration of the session? So in Tibetan, it's a little bit more concise. It says, in the actual session, what's the number and what's the duration? That's the actual question. The number of sessions could be either 4 or 3 times during the day and 3 times at night, which make a total of 6 as taught in Tantra. So generally speaking, when someone dedicates full time to the meditation, one can divide one's day in 4 or in 6. The 6 sessions make reference particularly to certain moments of the day where there's an energetic change, and when there when there is this energetic change, it's it's possible that our mind loses its stability. So one should be particularly mindful of that. So at dawn, noon, at dusk, and midnight, and to do it well and understand these moments well, there's a whole study that has to do with this inner cycle of inner winds, our prana, in relation to various elements, because we have this inner wind, this prana that's of nature wind, of nature fire, is nature earth, nature water, nature space, and so there's a whole study where we can recognize these winds, and when there's a full cycle from one when there's one passage from one full cycle to another, there's a change of one of these sessions. But now we just begin with inhale, exhale. The most common way is to divide the day into 4 sessions, and I wanted to add this. It's wonderful what we do in generally speaking, but it's also it's important along our path to allow ourselves to spend some time dedicated full time to our practice. It has a wonderful power. I mean, if one does it badly, anxiety can come, but generally the greatest danger is that one doesn't want to do anything else, but then one does, because Lama Ganchen he said, you need to learn this. And I said, well, I don't like it. And he said, since when can you do only what you like? Yes, okay, we do. We have other things to do. So, but I think we also have this objective that seems close, but now it seems a little farther. We want to realize here in Albagnano these small meditation huts in the woods. There's already the possibility, but the but the time that it takes to do all the bureaucratic work for this and for the city, they're kalpas. It feels like biblical times, but at least take a week. Little by little, get up to a month or 2 months, 3 months. Take a period where one really can sit down and dedicate himself to a meditative practice. It's something. I mean, there's no hurry. One needs to be ready, because if one tries to do this without having a solid basis, it's just more tiresome for oneself. But when you do this, usually you divide your day into 4 sessions. The first one before breakfast, so you begin before dawn. You should finish before dawn. Actually, it is the 2 hours before dawn. This is the moment where the energy, with the external energy, the natural prana energy of the earth, brings us naturally to an inner balance. Said that the masculine and feminine energy is balanced, and in many traditions it's said that the best time to meditate is the 2 hours before dawn. Obviously, to meditate before dawn, one needs to go to bed, ideally just a little bit after sunset. If you go to sleep at midnight or 1, how can you wake up at 3? Today I did it because I wanted to say goodbye. I wanted to say goodbye to Panchen Rinpoche. That's an exception. If you do that and then want to meditate, I'm sure you'll fall asleep. Instead, when you create a healthy cycle, that first session would be before dawn, before breakfast, and the second one ends it's after breakfast, before lunch, and then the third one before dinner, and the fourth one after dinner, after the sunset. And you can also just do 2 sessions or 1 session or 3 sessions. There's no there's not a minimum of 4. I mean, this is in reference to a retreat, or you can do 6 sessions. But there's no precise number of sessions. You can do it according to your needs.
Jisi nuba tesi sons, wenkyang ngachi dambanams, tangbo lechen kibuis, tun chung tang mangewarshes. Quanto tempo deve durare una sessione di
How long should a session last? The duration?
Tirocinante del praticante.
So, the duration of the session is something that suits the awareness of the training. It should be adapted to, there's no fixed rule. Because those supremely learned, because the supremely learned ones said that it can last as long as one can stay in the mode of lotus nature. It's said that one can stay, the session can last as long as you can stay in a meditative state. There were practitioners, Milarepa, who could meditate for weeks. And there was a period where I had an experience, which is quite particular, that had me reflect a lot on this fact that it is possible to dedicate longer periods of time for meditative concentration. When we worked on this tattoo wall here in the temple, these are taken from photographs from monasteries in Tibet, and then I took the measurements to the millimeter, and I assure you that taking measurements of a round structure is not easy. I had a laser and I had a metal measuring stick, and so then we put all these images together, and it is worked in like the most. It took a couple of weeks, and for at least 1 month, I slept one night. I slept every other night. I would dream in Photoshop. I would dream in pixels. And the most interesting thing is that during that period, I was monothematic. Nothing else existed for me, only what I was doing. There was nothing else. And the strange thing is that I've always loved sleeping. I used to go to sleep late. I would need to sleep late in the morning. And in that period, I was able, when I would sleep every other night and maximum 3 hours a night, I was full of energy. I was able to do so much. And I remember of having this sensation that this is possible to do also with meditation. But to do this, one needs to do only that, and the rest of the world needs to just disappear. And one is only there because one doesn't use up energy in other things and stays in this cycle, and this actually nourishes you. So it is possible, something like that. I mean, having very long sessions is possible. It requires a lot of preparation. And so yeah, the former and the latter holy beings, the holy beings of the past and present, propose that it's more positive to actually the text says it's advised for beginners to have shorter but longer sessions instead of trying to do long sessions. So how long should a meditation last? What you're able to do. But first of all, the advice is to not force it. If you sit down to meditate and actually you're forcing, and after an hour it's really tiresome, it's better not to do that, because we have this inner mechanism, which is when we live something well, we finish it in a pleasurable way. We have this desire to go back to it when we have an experience and it doesn't end up well. We don't want to repeat it, and we'll find every excuse to not repeat that. So especially at the beginning, one should conclude a meditation session when it's still pleasurable and never force it. Then little by little, it can be longer and longer. Then it's better at the beginning to have sessions of 5 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, but not force it. This is very important. So better to have a very short session, then have a break, and then you sit down for another section, and then another break, and then you pick up the session again. Much better to start like this. And it's beautiful that little by little one is able to rest one's mind in this meditative state. The more pleasurable it becomes, and then the times become longer and longer. The duration becomes longer and longer. And so how long should it last? In the Tantra, it's said, there's a whole part that explains the period of a meditative session should be a complete cycle of one's elements in like there and back, as if like clockwise, anti-clockwise. So there is that process of our inner cycles of prana that's linked to our breath. And then there are also various cycles related to elements. So a complete element is about 2 hours at the end. But so that's also a way just to measure how long a session should last. But for most of us, what happens is, first of all, to see how long a session should last, first of all, we need to meditate. And we begin with a little bit, without forcing. So we sit down, we do our 15 minutes where we relax. Oh, how wonderful. Oh, okay, it's done. Okay, and then we'll start again instead of forcing it. Okay. And time is relative. I advise also when one begins to meditate, if you have the ability, and it's not in our daily life where you need to get out to work. Of course, if I need to meditate before going to work, I need to find that time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But when we can have longer times, or without any kind of pressure of finishing at a certain time, we should allow ourselves to sit down and have that session, and then conclude it as you like. You're a little less slave to time. Maybe you sit down and, okay, 5 minutes went by, or maybe a half an hour went by, maybe 2 hours went by. And the next question is, how should one keep the body postures and so forth during those sessions? So so what's the physical posture during a meditative session? Let's see how we've translated this. So, cherish the possession of the 7 body postures for the achievement of a faultless concentration. In Tibetan, it's a little bit different. It says, So a concentration, the realization of a concentration without defects comes with the presence of the 7 body postures. So, what are the 7 postures of the body? Let's remember that our body and mind, they are directly connected. So, what happens in our body, how it is felt in our mind, and vice versa. Well, someone could say, no, meditation is a mental state of being. I can do it in any posture. Okay, if you're able, but I can assure you that if you're slouched over, you'll have more mental torpor and foggy mindedness. And if you're too if your back is rigid, then you'll have more and your head up, you'll have more mental excitement. So over the centuries, back to Buddha Shakyamuni, we have this we have the 7 body postures that works and has worked since Buddha Shakyamuni. One, our back. Let's remember that first of all, we need to sit down in a comfortable position, because if it's not comfortable, where's our mind going to go? To the pain here, pain there. So you sit in a comfortable position. It's important that if you're seated on a cushion, that your bottom should be higher than your knees. It's fundamental in meditation to keep our back straight. When the legs and the knees are higher than our tush, our butt, then our back naturally curves and we slouch. So if you want to meditate with a certain amount of frequency, please go look for your own meditation cushion. Try different kinds until you find the right one, and then as you meditate, maybe you need to change a couple times. So your bottom is higher than your knees. So the first part of the posture is our back, which needs to be straight but not tense. Imagine a kind of string that is attached to your fontanella, that it pulls a little bit, and so you have a straight line from your fontanella all down your spinal cord, but you're not tense. Your back is relaxed, not tense. It's straight, but not tense. So number 1 is our back. Number 2, our shoulders. Our shoulders shouldn't be pulled back or hunched forward. Very often one thinks that they're relaxed, but they're actually in tension. So when you sit down, it's important also to maybe just move your shoulders a little bit to make sure that they're relaxed. Then we have our legs. The posture of our legs, there are different traditions. In our tradition, our legs can be in the Vajra Asana in Sanskrit, which is where the 2 feet are on top of one's thighs, like this, what we would call a full lotus position. But as I said before, we need to be in we need to sit comfortably. So if this is not comfortable, don't force it. One who is used to it, why is this ideal? Because naturally my back is straight. So without having to do anything else, my back is in a perfect posture. And then otherwise we have to always put in a little bit of effort. Effort to get our back straight. If you want to sit like this, you need to train to be able to sit like this, do yoga and stretching. Or we can do a half lotus position with one leg on our thigh and one underneath. Normally, we put our right on top of our left, but you can also do the opposite. And then there's also just sitting cross legs, both with both legs under our thighs. Personally, I prefer this half lotus position. So we have back, 2 shoulders, 3 legs, 4 hands. Our hands should be in the meditative concentration mudra. So the left underneath the right with our thumbs that meet in the middle. Ideally, the thumbs should be at the height of our navel, and the 2 hands together are 3 fingers under our navel. Our arms are not touching our body, but they are bent enough that they create a natural triangle. If you're in a lotus position or half lotus position, then your hands are naturally at this height. So if you're not at that height, take a small cushion, a pashmina, some kind of scarf underneath, so that you can gain a little bit of height. Or keeping your hands on your knees would be better than keeping tension and keeping your shoulders up and trying to hold your hands up. So our back is straight, our shoulders are relaxed. So our number 1, back, 3 shoulders, 3 legs, 4 hands, and 5 is a head. So our head is slightly forward. And as we said before, our fontanella is in a straight line with our spinal cord. Our mouth is slightly closed. It's relaxed. The teeth don't touch, and our tongue should touch the roof of our mouth up front. I don't know if I can show you. So it's relaxed. And putting the tongue forward has a double function. It relaxes the body. And on the other side, when your tongue is like that, it allows you to not have to swallow saliva. So if you're going to meditate for a longer period of time, having to swallow saliva is disturbing. So if you don't do that, you'll have to swallow saliva and interrupt your concentration maybe, or you'll actually be drooling a little bit saliva out of your mouth. But if you're that concentrated, that's fine. But this could happen. It happens to me sometimes. Someone might have a little bit of phlegm and at that point you would need to swallow. But even in the Vedic tradition, there's this Kriya Yoga practices, so where you can first use like a neti pot with salt, and just also like inner cleansing to prepare yourself for meditation. So 1 back, 2 shoulders, 3 legs, 4 arms or as hands, 5 head, 6 mouth, and 7 eyes. There are different postures possible for the eyes, but in our tradition, they are looking downwards. They're almost closed, looking downwards. It's almost as so. If you, from your sitting position, if you imagine that you do a long, like a full prostration, that is a couple. Just imagine the length of your whole body, lying flat in front of you, that's the distance that you should be looking down on the floor. So you could say, slightly closed, slightly open, but we're not focusing on anything in particular. But some light still comes in. At the beginning, it can be easier to do with our eyes completely closed, but it's said that when one does it with our eyes slightly open, slightly closed, once you've developed this meditative concentration, then it's more stable, and then your visualizations become more stable. But sometimes, especially at the beginning, there's nothing wrong with closing your eyes without any kind of tension. So these are the 7 postures, and the 8th, sometimes it's explained as a posture, sometimes not, is our breath. So breathing correctly can be considered an 8th posture. In these days, we did this exercise a little bit, where we have an abdominal breath mostly, and when we inhale, we do the yogic breathing. We inhale. First, we fill up our belly, and then we keep breathing as much air as possible to fill up our chest, bringing the shoulders up a little bit, very slightly, very slightly. Then I hold. And when we hold the air, we're contracting very slightly our lower muscles, and we're focusing all of the air underneath our navel, the energy underneath our navel. Then we exhale, emptying the air first from above, and then at the very end, we contract our abdomen to empty out completely. Then we wait, and we hold before inhaling again. So this breathing in 4 phases, we inhale, fill up our belly, and then our upper thorax, and then we exhale, we let go of the air of our upper chest and then our belly, and then we leave space between the inhale and the exhale, and the exhale and the inhale. This is also part of our meditative posture, like the great master Marpalo Tsawa, who was also the master of Milarepa. He said even just sitting correctly, including the posture, that is already incredibly beneficial. I'd like to give some advice. It's something I did when I was younger, and it helped me a lot. It's a technique that we do before we meditate. When we meditate, we develop Lugi Xingjiang and Semgi Xingjiang, which means the flexibility of the body and the flexibility of the mind. We develop principally these 2 things. The flexibility of the body is when we say, okay, body, stay in this position, and one is able to stay in that position, and it's even pleasurable. If it's lacking, then we're thinking, oh, this, okay, the body hurts here, the body hits there, and this itches here, and and if you scratch once, then the whole body starts itching, and then it's over. So you reach the flexibility of your body when you're able to stay in the necessary position in that posture, and then it's actually physically pleasurable. The lack of mental flexibility is when we say, mind, stay here on this object of perception, and then the mind just jumps somewhere else. If we tell our mind to stay on one object, and it does, and it's pleasurable, then that's the flexibility of the mind. So first, we need to have first the flexibility of the mind. We need to have first the flexibility of our body, and then flexibility of the mind. So this exercise, which is a preliminary to meditation, it's not meditation, but it can help. We sit in the meditation posture and we take the commitment, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move. My mind can go where it wants, but I am physically not going to move. And I stay there for as long as I can. At the beginning, it will be just a few minutes, and then little by little it increases. And one is able to do this. There are two beautiful effects. There's a moment where one transcends that difficulty of staying still and becomes pleasurable. And one starts going towards the flexibility of the body. Another thing that's really interesting, this state of meditative concentration is not a state of constriction, because our tendency is I'm going to force myself to stay still and force my mind to stay on something. If you try to meditate like this, it's just not going to work. It's counterproductive. The meditative state is a state of deep relaxation where one rests on the object of meditation. This reminds me of when Lama Ganchen invited in Nepal the abbot of Lumpotata, the abbot of Dharmakaya, Lumpotata, this great monastery in Thailand. They met in Nepal, and it was after a long trip, and they went to the room. At a certain point, they said, "Oh, are you tired?" No, we meditated, Lumpotata and his attendants. And I remember that Lama Ganchen brought them here to Polino to Belvedere to see the view. Normally, when normally, I mean, if in today's world, you take someone to see such a beautiful view of the lake. If they even look at the lake, that's already a lot. Usually, it's just about taking a selfie. Instead, they sat down on a bench and they meditated. When one meditates well, one rests meditating. There's certain practitioners, for example, who they never lie down to sleep. They spend their night sleeping. One of my masters in Tibet lives like this. A great master who recently left his body, Lama Tsongkhapa Rinpoche, when he came to Brazil. When he opened up his center in Brazil, he was very good friends with Lama Ganchen, and Lama Ganchen was not well. And I remember Lama Tsongkhapa came to him. I was a young boy, and the night he came, he stayed in our new center, and he stayed there for the night. I was just a young boy, and I remember the next day I went to clean his room and to make his bed, but the bed was perfectly made. And I remember going to him and saying to Rinpoche, "You don't need to make the bed yourself. We'll do it for you." And he said, "Oh, well, I don't use the bed. I don't get under the sheets." So the mind is completely rested when one meditates well, and the body rests too. At the beginning, let's try not to force ourselves. So when we say, okay, at the beginning, we just say, I'm going to stay still. And there is a kind of force, and maybe we want to scratch, we want to move, but no, we just stay there without forcing our mind either. Maybe we can have a feeling that our body is one. We don't have the sensation of our hands, like one hand on top of another, or our hands on our legs. And this state becomes pleasurable, and a micro movement can become bothersome, even swallowing our saliva. So one is really still and relaxed, and it's pleasurable. If you reach a state like this, then naturally you naturally look for a place to rest your mind. So one doesn't force the mind to be still, to watch our breath or visualize the Buddha. No, that becomes an object of refuge where we can rest our mind. So we first find that physical balance, that state of stability, physical stability, to then allow our mind to rest somewhere. And when we see that there's a need, and when our mind needs to fly away somewhere, it like Panchen Losang Gyaltsen said in the text of the Mahamudra, that so the mind is like a bird on a ship at high sea. So even if it goes out to fly and flies around, goes around looking at everything, at a certain point we'll get tired and we'll have to come back to the boat. So the mind comes back to the mind to itself. So as you're concentrated on not moving your body, and then our mind in this period, our mind is free to go round and round, but at a certain point, our mind will be tired of going round and round, and that's where we can offer a place for the mind to rest. It could be our own breath. It could be a specific state of consciousness. It can be an image. So the key here is that one shouldn't try to force oneself to keep our mind still on something. We allow our mind to then rest on something. So a state of concentration is a state where one is rested on the object of concentration, of meditation. It's not a state of constriction. So the correct posture for meditation, including breath, naturally brings us to more inner calm. Also because if you do the breathing correctly, that activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and that will calm our body, calm our mind, which will naturally look for a place to rest. Quickly, the next two questions.
Una domanda un po' difficile da interpretare del tutto, perché per tradurre non è facile, anche se è una domanda semplice.
So the question is, how do you count? And it's not so easy to understand what's understood. So here, our dear Cherub, our dear translator Cherub added the word mantra, but I don't think that's right, because this word mantra doesn't appear here. So, Chanki the answer shows us that the mantra has nothing to do with the question, because it says there are many ways of counting. Visualizations, winds, effort, according to the ability and the characteristics of the practitioner. There are infinite numbers or many ways of meditating. There's not one technique of meditation that should be the same for everyone. So, according to the needs, I'm thinking about the story of a practitioner. So when he would sit down to meditate, and he was never able to meditate well, and his master told him to meditate upside down on his head, And it's said that physically, like his organs were upside down. And once I read actually that it is a condition, it's very rare, but it exists, where the inner organs are upside down. And so to meditate, well, he needed to be upside down. Anyway, it's just to say that the postures are the 7 postures, but actually we need to adapt to everyone's reality. If you have a problem on your back, then or something on your knees, you can sit in a chair. If you need to lie down, you can lie down. Even the way of meditating, there's not a fixed rule for everyone. So what can we count? We count breaths. There are the visualizations, process of visualizations. There's also the accumulation of mantras. There are many different things that one can count, but that should be adapted. That should be adapted to the practitioner. So the next question, we'll leave this one with this brief question. We begin with our breath. You count the breath to help calm one's mind, a little bit like counting sheep before falling asleep. Has anyone ever counted sheep before falling asleep? No? I've tried a couple times. It really works. The technique, if you have too many thoughts, just you imagine like a field with a fence, and on one side all the sheep or goats or any other animals. Normally they're sheep. And at a certain point, you start seeing, you count. One jumps from one side of the fence to the other. 1, 2, and the other one. 3. I can assure you that before you get to 15, you're already asleep. And if you're at 4 and you don't remember how many are, you go back to 1. When you start with your breath in meditation, like Panchen Rinpoche explained in the Lamrim, he said, imagine that at a certain point you have your meditation space and someone came and sat down on your cushion. But you want to meditate there. So what can we do in this case? The best thing is to go, there's the person meditating, and we say, oh, outside there's something really wonderful happening. Look, that person has arrived. Oh, look, the sunset is fantastic. And so the person gets up, goes out to see that, and then you can sit down on your cushion. This is the mind. This is where one can distract the mind and then take back that presence. So there are many techniques to count our breath so that we bring our mind to the present moment. Even this morning where we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. And then the speed depends on each one. Normally I do it more slowly. This is the only use I've found for the clocks that tick tock tick tock. Or normally they are very bothersome, but when you're meditating, it can be useful. That it's a kind of a rhythm for this. And if you can breathe counting like this, and you have to concentrate on it. You have to be present, and this helps our mind not go somewhere else. And at a certain point, one stops counting and one just stays in this 4-cycle breathing process. And there are other techniques. You inhale 1, exhale inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, up to 21. There's a beginner way is where I count, and then if at a certain point I forget what I'm doing and I lose count, and then I go back to 1. The expert one is
Espiro 2, inspiro 3.
I inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, and then if at a certain point my mind is distracted, even if I've maintained the numbers, I go back to 1. That's the expert way. This is also another technique related to breathing. And there are other techniques, visualizations that one first has this. There's an order of visualizations where we don't count 1, 2, 3, 4, but we follow a particular order. And so many techniques, or you don't count, but you just rest your mind on an object of perception. At the beginning, counting our breath helps bring us to the present.
Gomnam thangbo wok gyagar ke dan drawa te dila chegi gyunsen chitar yus. Gomnam kungi thangbo go gyagar ke tsun rangyula lekpar takpa yino she dame lama chok te shes. Qual è la ragione?
What is the reason for considering? So it's what here? What is the beginning? What is the beginning of meditation?
Dila chegi gyumsen chitarius. All'inizio della meditazione.
At the beginning of meditation, what is it that's similar to the Sanskrit language, and why do you begin it like that? We say in various Buddhist texts, sutras. So when a text is translated, first we put the original title in Sanskrit. So at the beginning, many sutras is Gegarketu in Sanskrit. So it's basically saying in meditation, what's the first thing to do and why? So just as like just as many texts begin with Sanskrit, what would be the first thing? What is the beginning of meditation, like the Sanskrit in the beginning of any sutra translation? And everything here in brackets was added by the translator. And the answer, the beginning of every meditation, which is like the Indian language, like Sanskrit, which is similar to Sanskrit, in the beginning of all the translations of Sutra in Tibetan, is to check one's own mind well, to observe one's own mind well. Gyu here is mind stream, so it's not a thought, but it's mind stream here. It's the flow of thoughts. So the first thing to do is to check the flow of one's mind as taught by the Supreme Unmatchable Guru. So the first thing that we need to do is observe oneself. When one sits down to meditate, after sitting in the correct posture, what's the first thing you should do? First of all, you should generate this self-awareness. You observe where you are, what's happening inside, a little bit like in the practice that we did. We observed our breath a little bit at the beginning, and then we observed those points of tensions in our body, and we released those. And then you find those spots of those places of tension in our mind. What we're doing is we're generating self-awareness. We're used to have our attention outside of ourselves. Normally, it's towards our five senses, what I see, what I smell, what I touch, what I hear, or towards thoughts that are thoughts of the past, of the future, thoughts of something that has nothing to do with where you are, what you're doing. When you start thinking about a film that you've watched, for example, or if you're watching a TV series and you start thinking about what's going to happen the next episode, that can happen. There was a friend of mine, this disciple of also of a master. So this monk, he wanted to dedicate his life to retreat. He wanted to do these 4 sessions for his life. He said, okay, but first you need to study. At least you need to have completed your studies of the Lamrim and the correct view of reality. So it's about 13 years of study. I said, okay. So he studied, and at a certain point he finished the 4 years of correct view of reality, and 9 years, and then 1 year of preparation, so 14 years. And then he went to my master, Geshe Thupten Rinchen, and he said, I want to go on retreat. He said, okay. He gave him all the indications of what he needed to do, every session, how to meditate. He gave him all the direction to do the retreat well. He helped him find a place to be on retreat and a family to sustain him, to support him. And he left him to go on retreat with an undetermined time for life. After a couple weeks, a couple months, I can't remember exactly, just a short time later, he came back and he went to my master and he said, Genla, I have a problem. I feel bad. I'm absolutely full of shame. I feel like an imposter. I'm there all day long with this family that's so kind to me. They've given me a place to stay. They feed me. And I'm there like a great practitioner. And I said, are you following the instructions? Are you doing what I told you to do? Yes, yes. So what happens? I sit down to meditate. And I begin well, but then all the scenes of the Bollywood moves that I've ever seen just come to my mind. You know, all those little dances with the choreography. And he said, no matter how much I try to forget this, I spend more time meditating on the sound, the songs that just and these dances. I feel like an imposter. So what happened in the 14 years of study, he studied the Dharma well, but every once in a while he would go, and it was actually prohibited. He would escape, many would escape, and they would go to the cinema and then go watch Bollywood movies, classic. When you do something you're not supposed to do, then that experience is even stronger, remains. And there's nothing wrong with Bollywood films, but that imprint was very deep. So my master gave him other indications. He needed more time to really take away those mental habits, and then he went he went back to retreat, and then I never heard that he came back. I hope that it all went well. So what happens is that when we sit down to we want to keep our mind straight. Our mind follows habits. Our habit is to go from one thing to another thing. We need to give the right amount of time, allow ourselves to be in that place. And at the beginning, it's tiresome, but once you're able to do it, it's enormously beneficial. So when one's sitting there and the mind is just going, every way possible, don't worry. To begin well, the first thing we need to do is to create this habit of being aware of ourselves, because we're used to seeing things outside constantly. Just think for a moment. Normally, how much time a day do we dedicate to just being self-aware of our thoughts, our body, where we are? Maybe 20% of the time? 10% of the time? 5? 2? 1? I don't know. The point is, in any case, it's not most of the time. We're used to having our attention outside of us since when? Since being very, very small. So one needs to create this habit of being with oneself. And one step to do that is to create this self-awareness of our body, of our mind. So the first thing that we need to do when we sit down to meditate is to generate self-awareness. And before we do that for our mind, which is the actual meditation, we need this self-awareness of our body. We feel our body, even the weight of our body on our cushion, the weight of our clothes on our body, the temperature of the air on our nostrils, giving space to space to the awareness, to the self-awareness. And then once we have more awareness, a self-awareness of our body, we can also it can also become very subtle. And then we go to this awareness of our mind. And when we're aware of the flow of our thoughts, that becomes the basis to be able to direct them. We can't direct our thoughts if we're not aware of them, if we don't see them. At the beginning, it's frustrating because one observes, but one is not able to control. So one sees the flow of one's thoughts that go everywhere, and one's not able to direct them. But that awareness is already a very important point. What can we do in the meantime? If we're waiting for someone, for example, maybe we're at the restaurant and we've ordered something to eat, and we're waiting for the food to arrive. Just the awareness of that moment. We observe our body, our mind, the flow of our thoughts. We bring ourselves to that present moment. If we have to wait for something, it's an excellent opportunity to generate this awareness. But if during the day we take advantage of these times and we train in generating this self-awareness of body and mind, when we actually sit down to meditate, it'll be much easier. These are the preliminaries to meditate. So this self-awareness is the preliminary. The Tibetans have developed over the centuries. It's not always easy to sit down and concentrate. So they base themselves on recitation, where speech directs the mind. So there are many practices where there's a lot of recitation. It's a very valid technique, and when you get into this process of recitation, you placate other thoughts, but then there's also the danger that the recitation is only recitation, because once you've recited it 20,000 times, and there you are, Sangye Chodon Sogi Chonam La Chachut Bardadani Kepsuchi Dagi Jisondo. So in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. For the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I even lifted my eyes up as if I were really inspired. But maybe I'm thinking about lunch and I'm hungry. What's happening in the world? Look what happened in Venezuela. You can think about so many things because we're so used to repeating that it doesn't have that same effect. We need to be careful. The recitation is a marvelous technique, especially when you do longer recitations. And here, one asks, why are we doing it in Tibetan? Wouldn't it be better in Italian or English? Some point, yes, so you understand well what you're saying. But the recitation in Tibetan, each word is a maximum of 2 syllables, 3 syllables. That goes together. The recitation goes together with breath, and it really helps you get into a different state of meditation, and that also allows for the use of melodies. There's an enormous difference between Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Difference between that and when we talk in our language, when we recite speaking, where does that physically, where do we feel that? At our heart or our head? In Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it comes from our head. But when we sing with melodies,
Chanchu partu dani kyapsuchi dagi jinso gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shon. Dove lo senti?
Where do you feel that? More in your heart. It has a totally different effect, even from a scientific point of view. When we recite, we're really using one side of our brain. When we're singing, both sides of the brain are working together. So the melodies are part of the technique and have a particular power. So there are meditation techniques like the Guru Puja or self-healing with the recitation. But before we recite, one needs to sit down correctly, use one's breath, and be self-aware, observing one's body, absorbing one's mind.
Poi la nostra lingue nei nostri
And in our Western languages, in English and Italian, etc., they're languages that need time to adapt to Buddhism. So sooner or later, we'll find formulas and melodies. So I've heard different examples of singing in our languages. It just doesn't have the same effect.
Rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Magari per qualcuno.
Maybe that works really well for you, but for me it brings a kind of different connotation. Doesn't have the same effect, but trying to take traditional trying to take traditional melodies, they're made for two-syllable words. It just doesn't work if we use our Western languages. So we're living at this time from what came to Tibet and what has arrived here, and little by little we're making this bridge. So it's important to know the meaning. Normally, first we recite in Tibetan, and then we recite in our language. So I would recommend to recite first in our language and then in Tibetan. If we recite, for example, in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment, etc. Or then I start. I know what I'm saying. I know where I should be directing my mind. So I invite you to take your life in your own hands, in the sense these days are they're ending. Tomorrow is the end of our winter retreat, and people go back to your daily life, and we need to be careful to not just fall back into automatic habits. So we develop awareness in our daily life. We have clarity of what direction we want to go, and we really should be careful of how we use our speech, because our speech has an enormous power of how we direct our mind and how we interact with others. So create moments for formal meditation. If you say, "Oh, I don't know how to meditate," well, start by sitting correctly. Start by generating this awareness of your body and your mind. Just breathing. If you can do this with a certain constancy, that's already so much. It's a basis that will support everything else. I suggest that you don't begin with wanting to do very advanced practices without the foundation. So self-healing is wonderful, the preliminary practices, but first of all, sit down and breathe. This self-awareness, this is the first thing that's necessary. So we have in our hands a very special opportunity. 3 conditions that are quite rare. It's said that they are the 3 conditions to make our life meaningful. We have the minimum necessary, materially speaking. We have, which means that we don't need to worry, and we're not slave to our own survival. We have someone to guide us correctly on the path of the Dharma, and we have the desire to practice. So I invite you to put yourself in the game, to get to work. I mean, this is important. Someone said, "Oh, it's not an easy path." No, it isn't. I agree. It's not easy because it requires that we go against our habits, that we get to work, but it's beautiful. It's a marvelous, marvelous experience. And And the only problem, let's say, is that once you start, you can't get out. And because it's beautiful. But I invite you to bring the Dharma to your daily life. If really, one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself and to the world. When I see the conflicts and problems around, we live in a very complex time. I believe sincerely that these conflicts come from the lack of healthy values and the lack of respect and love and compassion. They come from an obsession with self-cherishing without kind of any kind of shame. And so now it seems like being selfish and self-centered is the rule, and if you're not, then you're stupid. Instead, it's not. When we're able to practice the Dharma, we allow ourselves to practice Dharma with a certain amount of seriousness. We stop victimizing ourselves, and we have a healthier life inside. This is one of the greatest positive investments that we can make. It's one of the best things that we can do for the world is to be an example of what the world needs and what the world's missing, and this is possible. We can absolutely do it. And remember that our path starts where we are, and the fastest path is the one we're able to walk. So we respect the length of our own legs, but we walk with a high objective and without any kind of expectation to already be there. This is the end of the teaching. Tomorrow there will be the conclusion of the course. I thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll have the Guru Puja together with Lama Caroline, where we'll be able to be together. We'll rejoice for what we've done together and concentrate on where we want to go, to thank and rejoice. So as I said yesterday, who needs to leave today and I need to go with the children briefly. So if you are here also tomorrow, maybe you come tomorrow for a greeting. If you're leaving today, fine. Now is fine.
Losan tempe drame sasomgi drove munsel takto ne gyur chi sashi pöke chushi metotra rirabling shini de gembadi sange shindu mikte ulwargi drogun shingla chöpar sho yidam guru ratna mandrala kam niryata yami. Chanchu simchu rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyurchi ke pa nyampar me pa yang kongne kontu pelwar shon. Ripetete dopo di me.
Repeat after me.
Chö lam tudro lam la parche mi yomar shon.
May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences.
May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Jigde yampe gyalkam tamche tu mine chungne sesera tempa dam Mage muge guba kunshi shin Tserene me deki demparashun. In tutti I paesi di questo vasto mondo,
in all the lands of this great world, may the sicknesses of humans, the sicknesses of animals,
I conflitti,
conflicts,
le calamità naturali,
natural disasters and droughts, wars and hostilities, and all conflicts be pacified. And may all beings live constantly with a long life, good health, joy, and peace.
Imo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin Ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lo kuncho sumki ngodrubot sol kuncho sumki trashishon All'alba o al
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Omahon Tembalame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyobalame Tamcho Rinpoche, Trimbalame Gendo Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chöpa. Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch.
Ci vediamo
And
domani alle 7:30.
see you tomorrow morning at 7:30, and then for the Guru Puja at 10:30.